Okay, cool. Now that we're all here, I'm going to kick this off. As you guys know, this is Ingalandia, Head of Partnerships and Integrations for the Sovryn Protocol. I'm going to kick this off with some oven fresh wraps. I know you guys look forward to it every week, and here they are without fail. All right, here it goes. All right. November 11th, and the devs get to step in 160 million TVL, reach the heavens. I'm talking about our very own Sovryn decks. Ingalandia, the deal flow architects, at the helm when it comes to partnerships. Give me a deck and a contact, and I'm off to pitch. From protocol integrations, level collateralization, I'll propose the idea and an opening statement. I'm the greatest, a myth among the metaverse nations, finance on Bitcoin, the purest of creation. We've had a few sips ratified, community is satisfied. We're not here just because my raps are nice. We stay sharp and on point like a samurai. Sovryn Mint stable coins gonna standardize. Your keys, your control. I'm just here to amplify Bitcoin stacking high like nobody can deny. All right. Whew, that was a world premiere, first ever run through of that verse. Hope you all enjoyed it. Thanks, guys. Let's kick off the Sovryn Community Call episode 29 with the governance report led by Idan Yago. Are you there?
I'm here. Hello, everyone. Good to reconnect with you again. So there's a lot of things going on. I think we're having the densest period we've had so far in terms of governance. And it's making me think that the idea that we should be looking for ways to provide more scalable governance and the SOV bonded token sub-DAOs might prove to have been something that we turns out we needed even sooner than we thought. There's more and more projects and development work being done in parallel, and that's creating the need to have more and more votes occur closer together. And because it's important that these votes can have an adequate amount of attention, you don't want to have, I think, too much density of governance decisions in one particular voting structure. So I think the fact that we're starting to see this increasing density of votes is an indication that probably it was a good idea that we started moving when we did towards having more scalable governance. And that's something that's going to be a bit of an experiment with the sub DAOs. Now, as it so happens, one of the first sub DAOs is in the process of being born right now. The bootstrapping event for the Sovryn Mint is currently undergoing. There have been over 2,000 participants so far. There's still, I think, 4 days. What is the date? 4 days until November 15th that it's possible to participate in the Sovryn Mint. The team has also been putting out a bunch of more information to make it easier to answer questions that are coming from the community. I put out a couple of videos explaining my views on the importance of Sovryn Mint and the associated subprotocol Origins, Zero. I'm very, very excited by the fact that we're introducing these Bitcoin-backed stablecoins and such an easy way to create them with zero interest loans. I think a big deal. So we've got a few more days of mint. We also had the SIP 45 for Origins subprotocol passed. So Origins will be becoming a subprotocol. That passed with a high degree of consensus, and so I think we, owe a debt of gratitude and congratulations to Sheben and the rest of the Origins team for taking the time to listen carefully to the community, to discuss with them, and I think what the community managed to do in terms of analyzing the proposal, proposing alternatives, and eventually ultimately helping the Origins team come up with a better proposal was what allowed us to go from a controversial proposal to a proposal which had a high degree of consensus, as well as I think just proved good governance and a thoughtful community as well as thoughtful teams. Coming up next, we have the Zero subprotocol SIP. From what I've been seeing in the forums, there seems to be a lot of support for that, and I think that makes a lot of sense. SIP 31, splitting AMM fees with SOV stakers. This one's been a long time coming. We were able to postpone it to improve the methodology, and so that's coming soon. We also have Mint Layer and Niftify, as well as a few other projects that are looking to launch on Origins in the pipeline. There's also the SIP to introduce both as a new AMM and lending collateral BZR, or a stablecoin tied to the Brazilian real, which I think can give Sovryn access to the Brazilian community and a very big user base which really needs Bitcoin and is using Bitcoin for everyday needs, both savings and international transactions. I think that's a very, very exciting one, in particular because it opens up the world of FX to Sovryn. And one of the biggest deals is Lightning network integration, which came out of the hackathon and then later a grant. The first version of that is on mainnet, and the integration of Lightning Network into Sovryn and with Sovryn is a very, very big deal, I think, both for Bitcoin users in terms of allowing them to use Sovryn more easily, for Sovryn in terms of allowing easier on-ramps and off-ramps, and also for Lightning Network. One of the big problems with Lightning Network is that all transactions are peer-to-peer. And they can't even be from multi-sig address to multi-sig address. They're from single address to single address. And that makes it very, very difficult to have enough channel capacity to manage transactions of significant size, or any size, and route them to wherever you want. And one of the big opportunities I think here is to have the smart contract layer being built by Sovryn effectively act as like a back office for routing transactions between channels and a way of effectively pooling liquidity. And this is going to take time to develop, but it's a big deal. So there's a lot going on, and you'll hear more about that from Aurora and the rest of the team. There's one thing that I wanted to raise, and we can discuss it later if you guys want. But I've started looking into the opportunity to have another sort of more institutional fundraise for Sovryn. I think that there's a lot of infrastructure that Sovryn is building. We want to expand the team. We want to make sure that Sovryn is going to have the firepower and the dry powder to continue development, R&D, and adoption for years to come. And so I've been starting to have conversations with people who either I've been reaching out to or have been reaching out to me about the possibility for the exchequer to perform a sale of SOV tokens. So that nothing has sort of been structured around this yet, but I think it's a good idea for us to all be aware that this is an opportunity, and if the community has any thoughts or ideas around that, I think that would be great to hear. And so with that, I'm going to hand it back to you, Ingemar.
Cool. Do we have any questions on anything that Iago mentioned? Go ahead. Do you have a question?
Yeah, this is David. How big of a raise are you guys looking to do, like ballpark?
I think on the order of everything that we've raised up until now, and maybe a little bit more. So if right now the treasury is sitting on something between 265 or 300 Bitcoin, something on the order of that. So we're probably looking at maybe the order of magnitude of between $30 million and $50 million. But it's hard to say until I've investigated the market more. And and have had more opportunity to speak with everyone who might be involved. But that's sort of my intuition of what we could be targeting.
Okay, thanks.
Okay. Any other questions before we move on with tech updates with Audit?
Yeah, I have a question, please. Regarding the BRZ, I'm from Brazil right here, and I want to know if the Brazilian reais will be a stable coin under the Mynt protocol.
That's a possibility, certainly. So the way Mynt works is it is collateralized by Bitcoin, right? And the BRZ token is collateralized by dollars or Brazilian real in a bank account. So it's a centralized stablecoin. I would expect that Mint would likely be looking to put out a number of different types of pegs. Some of them could be existing currencies. Some of them could be to currencies even more stable because everything's currently inflating. And that's part of the reason why Mint token and Mint governance is important. But I suspect that you want to try and see some traction. You might want to see some traction first before you start pushing out all of these other tokens. Although it might be easy enough to create new pegs. So I think the first one is likely to be pegged to the fiat currency of a nation, very likely the dollar, and then we might see additional ones.
So Iago, I think the question was about the BRZ token that you were referring to earlier, which is specifically a fiat-backed stablecoin, right?
Yeah, so I'm making the distinction between BRZ as a centralized stablecoin and whatever Mint would put out, which is backed by Bitcoin.
Yeah, I just mean, I think the question was, is the BRZ token that you were referring to earlier issued by Sovryn Mint, or is it a fiat stablecoin? And the answer is that it's a fiat stablecoin.
Correct.
From which VCs this in this way I was going to put it?
I apologize. Can you rephrase
He's
it?
saying which VCs are you going to raise from, I think is the
Yeah.
question.
Yeah, that's the question.
Okay. I think it's too soon to say.
Okay.
Yeah, one question, please. I was wondering that what is the focus of the sovereign leadership team? Whether they are only looking into institutional clients, or they are also looking to serve the retail clients as well. Because I like the project Sovereign project because it is totally backed on BTC. That's why I want to associate with it. But I want to understand what would be the approach to it. Whether at first you are just focusing on the institutional client or having them on board, or do you have any front end for the retail also? Any timeline to that? Am I clear in my question?
Yes, I think you are clear. I think it's a complicated answer, so I'll try and be brief, but give a sense. So first of all, I think there's different types of value that the different sort of investor classes bring. Ultimately, Sovryn is the product of the community that has stake in it, of its stakeholders. But these stakeholders can be both sort of like what you maybe would call retail, or basically just individual users, and they can also be groups. And those have different amounts of capital behind them, different sets of expertise behind them, and different value that they bring. Doesn't mean that one group is more important than the other, although I would actually say that the users are the most important. But I think there's still an important role for strategic players to play. Now, with regards to how this can be raised, I think something along the lines of the whatever we choose as the Bitocracy to offer to any strategic partners, we'd probably want to offer something along those lines to anyone who would like to participate as well. So one of the things that I've been thinking about, and this I've been thinking about for much longer than this relatively new idea of raising strategic capital, is that one of the things that Origins could do is potentially have auctions for SOV on occasional or perhaps on an ongoing basis, allowing people to choose to acquire SOV, which is going to be locked up for a long time, but potentially at some kind of discount to market. And that becomes a way of allowing people to take strategic bets on SOV or to acquire sort of pre-staked SOV. And so as Origins matures, which is happening very quickly, that becomes more of an option for us.
All right, let's move it on to Light.
Sure, yeah. So I'll be filling in for Sue and Aurora today, talking about back-end smart contract and front-end developments. So looking back at what was worked on since the last community call, we had a front-end release, which pushed out a number of updates, including the updates that were required to get Origins working with the Mynt Bootstrap event, which is, as Iago mentioned, live now until the November 15th. There were some bug fixes on the reward page. Mobile support was disabled for a while, so if you tried visiting live.sovryn.app on a mobile phone or mobile browser, there would be like a warning message, and it basically wouldn't let you do it unless you kind of explicitly click through the warning and said, you know, I'm fine. I understand that it's not going to work well. But there have been some improvements on the mobile Web3 wallets that make it so you technically could use Sovryn on mobile now, and the experience will be at least from a wallet perspective more or less the same as the desktop experience. The only thing that you want to look out for is that the app itself, the Sovryn app itself, is not fully mobile responsive yet, and so some of the pages might look funny, but the functionality is there. And the previous issue where mobile users were getting way overcharged for gas when using the MetaMask mobile browser in particular has now been solved. Another improvement that got pushed out was some improvements to the margin trading app. There were some various pricing display issues that have been fixed. This team is currently continuing to work on the margin trading app, in particular looking at how the position margin is displayed. So you can expect to continue seeing improvements to the margin trading app. And then finally, there was an update to how the SOV circulating supply is calculated on the stats page, which is the main landing page, which is at the bottom of the main landing page at live.sovryn.app. Some other development work that has been ongoing since the last community call would be work on a UI, a user interface for the Mynt bonding curve. So once the Bootstrap event is over, the bonding curve itself will actually go live, and people will be able to trade against the bonding curve, either deposit SOV to generate Mynt or burn Mynt to withdraw SOV. And there's also been work ongoing to get ready for the Zero SIP vote next week and the Zero Bootstrap event, assuming that the SIP is approved. we want to be ready for the Bootstrap event to start the week after that. So now we're looking forward. We're going to be continuing to work on spot and margin trade design updates in line with general improvements and quality of life improvements on those pages, as well as getting them ready for limit orders. Work on limit orders is continuing. Work on perp swaps is still continuing. And we're also continuing to work on fast BTC. The front end work there is almost done. And the code base is going under audit, or is now under audit, I should say. And another, the last thing I'll mention is that, because I've seen some questions about this in the chat, is that there's a fee distribution script that's been worked on, which will be running weekly on Fridays to distribute the fees from protocol revenues to SOV stakers. So the plan is to activate that tomorrow. And like I said, that script will be running weekly to distribute those fees every Friday. And one thing to note here is that although we have this script and it will be running, like the Sovryn developers will be running their own version of the script. Anybody can actually trigger the fees to be distributed. So if it doesn't get the script doesn't get run on a particular day, or someone just wants to trigger the fees before Friday, anyone can actually kind of poke the contract to distribute those fees. And we're going to be, we're going to be publishing some documentation in the wiki sometime in the near future that instructs people how they can do that, either using a smart contract CLI or an interface like MyCrypto that allows you to enter contract data to interact directly with contracts. So those are the main updates I had from the development side.
Can I ask you a question, John, on that last point?
Yeah, what's up?
So is that an individual triggering of fees, or is that a triggering of the whole script that would be anybody could trigger?
Yeah, so this script, it's basically just a script that runs, and then when Friday comes around, it will send a transaction to poke the smart contract and release the fees. So anybody can technically poke the smart contract to release the fees. It's just that we're going to have a script that's like running in the cloud somewhere that will automatically do this every Friday. But if somebody really wants the fees on Tuesday or something like that, they can poke the smart contract themselves and distribute the fees. And when you do that, it will actually distribute the fees for everybody. It's not just for the specific user that poked the smart contract.
So that means that we could have multiple people on an individual day triggering the fee distribution contract regularly, and it not being then run on Fridays. So basically, 7 people could trigger it on a single day, theoretically, and everybody would be getting their fees.
Theoretically.
Do you not think that the likelihood of that happening would be pretty high?
Well, it's not free to do this. It costs gas. So somebody would basically have to volunteer to pay the gas to do this. If someone wants to be so altruistic, they're, of course, like I said, anybody can do it. Whether or not somebody's actually going to do it, at the very least right now, the core Sovryn team has committed to pay the gas every Friday to do this. But that it
Can I
might
ask-
not be forever, and sometimes the script might go down for some reason. So like I said, the technical capability is that anybody can poke this contract and release the fees. They're just
Can
gonna
I
have to pay gas to do so.
Can I ask what the gas is on average to distribute the fees to everybody on the weekly basis? Do we know what that number is? What that total gas fee is that the exchequer will be covering?
I don't know what that fee is. If someone else on the call knows, you can speak up. Otherwise, I would have to follow up with you about that. That's it from me. Thanks.
Okay, cool. Malva, do you have adoption updates?
Yeah, hi everybody. Just I suppose just a recap of what we've been up to in adoption and across the marketing function really over the last 2 weeks. As some of you may know, we're building up the marketing function quite aggressively. Judas came on to lead the marketing function. Luca has moved across from community to be the social media lead. Magnus has started last week. He's going to do some email marketing and some other skill levels are for creative stuff. So some maybe YouTube, also TikTok possibly in the future. Zico has been focusing on our YouTube channel and getting a strategy built out for that. And Austin has joined mainly as some research looking at other protocols, how they do things, how we can learn from others and better the Sovryn protocol and better our messaging. And Sly started this week looking at communities and ambassador programs of how other protocols are doing it inside and outside of crypto and how we can build up a really good community based on referrals, affiliates, ambassador programs, scoreboards, and just get that project going because I know people have been crying out for that. Other than that, DWiz has come on board and is going to start running some sort of operations, helping the various circles and teams in Sovryn work more efficiently together and comms across the project, get it going a lot smoother. And we're working with 2 external writers to get more content and more creative stuff about Sovryn and the protocol. Those guys currently also work for brands such as Real Vision and Bitcoin Magazine, among others. So they're really good. So we're working with them to work out some content strategy. And mainly, I suppose, the focus of the adoption team is education and working on a strategy to maybe create as much explainer videos about the protocol, about Sovryn, about our vision for the future, and help the community, particularly the community managers, have all the information they need when we're launching new products such as Mynt, such as Zero, and just keep the community up to date. So it's really building out the team. It takes time for people to come on board, learn about the project, learn about the vision, and settle in and get processes in place. And then education. So that's what we've been up to over the last few weeks, amongst loads of other stuff. But that's the main goal, to get these new contributors on board and start creating as much content as we can to promote the project. That's it for me, Ingemar.
Cool. Do we have any questions for Malva or anything mentioned thus far?
Hey, it's David. I actually have a question for John Light. SIP 31 on the forums, you briefly mentioned a subtle change that's going to be made. Maybe you could elaborate on that and the time frame of when we can expect to see that be implemented.
Yeah, sure. So originally, I shouldn't say original. So originally, the plan was to make it so that when the fees were split, all of the fees from all of the swaps would be split between LPs and SOV stakers. But we realized as we were going into the implementation that it would take longer, or there was basically a partial implementation that we could do that would be relatively quick, and then we would be working in parallel on a solution, on a full solution that would take longer. And kind of just as development kind of progressed, the first solution, the partial solution, ended up taking longer than expected for various reasons. And so the decision was made, okay, since it's actually looking like, it'll take a long time to do this anyways, we might as well just do the full solution so that all of the fees are split instead of only some of the fees. And so now we're kind of back to the original idea, which is that all of the fees from all of the AMM swaps will be split between LPs and SOV stakers instead of only some of the fees, which is what the SIP was saying for a period of about a month or so. And so now we're just wrapping up the technical implementation of that. The SIP text itself has been updated to reflect that we're doing the full solution with all of the fees being split. And we're just, I think we're now, the technical implementation is either done or very close to being done, and just getting ready for, getting ready for a review. So, putting that through review, audit, and then pushing to mainnet for the actual SIP vote. And that we think is probably a week or two away. But that's just an estimate based on where we're at right now.
That makes sense. Thank you.
All right. May I ask one question?
Sure, go ahead.
Yeah, so it's about the audit that you guys mentioned. Just curious to who will be doing the audits?
For SIP 31 specifically, because we have different auditors working on different projects.
The Sovryn audit process is, there's no one auditor. There's internal audits on every PR. There's an external team that audit every single PR. And then we also have products go out to different auditing, third-party auditors for auditing. And then there's also a quarterly audit of the entire system.
All right, cool. So regarding business development, there is a proposal for the BRZ stablecoin to go live very soon. The pull request has been made. We met with a risk management firm that could potentially assist with AMM incentive management and optimizing lending and borrowing parameters. I'll be heading to La BitConf in El Salvador next week. So if anyone else is headed there, give me a shout. Maybe we can meet up for coffee. We recently funded another Bitcoin-backed stablecoin project, separate from Mint, separate from Zero, with the focus on stability, inflation resistance, and not being pegged to the American dollar. So that's underway. Stablecoins on stablecoins. We have a wallet app.
I would point out, sorry, England, just one thing I want to point out is that it's very likely that that project is using technology similar to the RAI project on Ethereum, and it's extremely likely that it'll be integrated into Mint at some point.
That's awesome. And that's what I kind of first saw. So we have a wallet app beginning to integrate BTC lending and interest earning within their app for their audience. They're in our Discord now, and we're just beginning the first steps of integration. And I might have to be vague with this last point. There's an NFT project proposed by a community member. So we'll need some front-end developers and designers. I found a Solidity developer who is interested in working on this because it might be small enough for him to handle in the short term. But we are in need for more developers, especially front-end and designers, if you are interested in collaborating on an NFT project on the Sovryn, in the Sovryn ecosystem. So that's it with the updates pretty much. Does anyone have questions regarding that?
I'd like to ask you about BRZ. BRZ as a stablecoin would be integrated with Babelfish, or would be integrated with Mint? I mean, obviously Babelfish, because it's not a Bitcoin-backed stablecoin.
Right. BRZ, this proposal for this particular listing will be just to make a collateral for like leveraging. In like the Sovryn DEX.
Okay, so it would be available only as collateral. It wouldn't be traded in the AMM.
It will be traded in the AMM. For the AMM, you don't really need a proposal for it. Like anyone can just do that Uniswap style, but to make it collateral in the system, there has to be a proposal.
Okay, so but it won't be included with Babelfish in their basket.
Correct. Not at the moment. Though it would be interesting to see how that would work since they have different. It's like a different peg.
It can't work actually because it's USD and that's Brazil, right?
Right.
It can be done.
Means
It's,
you will kind of balance it to dollar.
yeah,
Kind of.
yeah, exactly. But the technicalities of how that would be done is more a Babelfish conversation. It's not something we want to linger on.
Alrighty, so we got through this call pretty swiftly. We do have a leadership call in 20 minutes, so like those of us in Sovryn Core leadership, we can only hang around for about 20 more minutes. So feel free to ask us anything.
I had a question. I just wanted to know what you guys are thoughts on the Taproot upgrade. Looks like it's coming live in 3 days. It seems like it's going to benefit Sovryn. I just looked up Rootstock and they're definitely very excited about it. It's going to add a lot more privacy, as well as cheaper transaction fees. So I just wanted to know if you spoke to Rootstock at all, or have you guys ran any tests or anything like that?
I assume by Rootstock you mean the RSK team. So Rootstock is a
Yes.
protocol.
Yeah.
So RSK and Rootstock are separate. One is a company and the other is a technology.
Oh, sorry, the RSK network.
No, that's fine. It's just worth making the distinction.
Yeah.
Taproot's cool in a lot of ways. I think the way I think it's most the biggest deal I think is around the peg. It allows the potential to build a more permissionless, more trust minimized, and more private pegging, so peg in and peg out system. And I think that's not going to happen in the immediate sense because it's not trivial work, but that's a pretty big deal.
Okay, so we probably won't see that effect within the 3 days of the soft fork there, or it'll probably be later in the future.
Yes, definitely. It's not going to be something which takes effect immediately. Taproot is adding new capabilities to Bitcoin, but then the technology needs to be built to be able to take advantage of those capabilities.
Okay, I see. Yeah, because they're talking about smart contracts on the network and all the good stuff that would help out Sovryn for sure.
Cool. Ingmar, may I say something about Sovryn Origins?
Yeah, sure.
Great. So we're going to be running a marketing competition to assist the Origins team in finding a strapline. Strapline being a short 5 to 7 word description of Sovryn Origins. The winner will be receiving 1,500 OG tokens. Expect that competition to launch either tomorrow or on Monday and run for a week. And that's that. Yeah.
Okay, I missed some of that. How can someone participate?
We'll be posting a type form, which allows people to submit their proposals for a strapline under a set of guidelines. And then once we've collected those, they will be put together into a voting form for the community to vote on which one they like the most and declare the winner for the strapline.
Okay, cool. That's awesome. I have a question for the community. Is there any piece of content that that we've put out that you have feedback on that you really liked? Is there like a video that informed you? Was there a tweet that especially caught your attention? I thought I'd take a minute to just ask you guys, what are we doing well or not well?
Well, I kind of got brought in by a friend who sent me this really cool video that you guys did, I suppose, like last year or fairly early on. It was the Fiat Lords episode. I found that rather amusing and fun and well thought out, and like I think the target audience for that is I think you may have nailed it pretty much. I really enjoyed that video. Yeah, so stuff like that.
Yago's explanatory videos are extremely good. I think we can do more of those.
So could you, because I was trying to learn more about Mint, but I was not able to come across any resource for that. So could you please direct me to that resource directory? That would be really helpful. And for the main part, the main popular one or explanatory videos. So that would be another question is what is the outlook for Sovryn to expand in other markets, and how come
Yeah, if
we
nobody
can
else is
be
going to
how
feedback
can
or
we
ask
can
questions, is it okay if I ask another couple of questions on Mint?
Sorry,
and...
someone is speaking right now.
Oh, I'm so sorry. Yeah, I may have muted them myself. I'm so sorry. Go ahead.
No,
It was
it's okay. It's
Vitruvius.
okay. No,
Go
yeah,
ahead.
yeah. So,
Go ahead.
so my I suppose that my first question part would be clear, and the second part of my question was how what is the outlook in terms of where Sovryn can contribute in the DeFi space, since that Ethereum is right now very much have the lion's share, and how can Bitcoin can again recapture that share? What we need to do as a community, because and as a supporting Sovryn, so that we can do and make people believe that okay, DeFi can be achievable with Bitcoin as collateral. Yeah.
Okay, I can attempt to answer at least one of the parts of your question. How do we tap into other DeFi ecosystems? I think especially with Ethereum, I work towards making the case that whoever, like when an Ethereum comes over to Sovryn, that there's nothing that like they can't do here that they can't do on Ethereum. So that means building out the ecosystem, other types of trading protocols, NFT marketplaces. There's still plenty to build out so that, when people enter this ecosystem, that they have everything that they would want to do in DeFi so that they don't necessarily have to go back. There's that, and also bridging to other chains so that we can have like our native assets trading on those ecosystems and tapping into that liquidity. So those are like two initiatives that we're working extensively on.
Can I make a question? For the last few weeks, I have been seeing Jack Dorsey. It's developing a project. About a project to create a decentralized exchange focused on Bitcoin, and I want to know if that it's a good thing for Sovryn, or if it's something that maybe can be as a competitor or something like that. I want to know what your thoughts about it.
We've been having conversations on an ongoing basis with various people who are working on some of the projects that Cash App and Square are involved in. Among other things, they've mentioned working on rootstock as well. They've been looking at Sovryn. I think a lot of the work that they're doing is very, very early stage. And it's going to take a while for it to mature, but we have been looking to help contribute where possible, and I don't think it's really competitive. Even if it was competitive, it would bring so much more attention to Bitcoin Layer 2 systems and Bitcoin generally that would be great for Sovryn. I think it's going to prove to be the kind of thing where there's going to be a lot of synergies. I also think it's going to take a bit of time before it is live.
I think I saw something on Twitter. Two things. One is that they said that there would be a white paper coming out within a couple of weeks, and that was a couple of weeks ago. So you'll probably see it like by the end of this month. But we'll see. And then the other thing is that I saw them basically say that they were going to be focusing on fiat. So it seemed like it was more going to be like either a competitor or maybe somehow integrated with BISC. But as opposed to something like a crypto asset token to token kind of exchange. But that's I think still speculation at this point. So we'll probably just have to wait for their white paper to see what they're really thinking about doing there.
May I this time? Sorry for interrupting earlier. So I'm kind of new on this whole. While I understand the concept of forking, I've developed a couple of applications myself, but never, smart contracts or something of this scale. But I had a question on like in general on forking and teams that fork other teams' project. And my thought there go something along the likes of like when you fork another project that's taken like years to R&D and to test, to have like real world analytics and like really battle testing it. When you fork it, like how can a team be confident in its ability to understand the tech, the risks, and how can they be confident in that and their ability to continue to innovate on something that they haven't necessarily built themselves? Any thoughts on that, or like could you comment?
Sure. Sovryn has made a point of primarily choosing to use existing code where possible, code that has already been battle tested. Aurora, in her manifesto at the very, very early days, wrote that she viewed Ethereum as a giant testnet for the stuff that we want to be doing. And it's a great testnet because it's got real funds at risk. The code that is being used by Sovryn today, a very, very large amount of it has been forked from other projects. Compound, BZX, Aave, and others. Uniswap. But maybe the biggest piece of it is from BZX, actually. Now, BZX, in the period of time where, since the first pieces of BZX code were implemented into Sovryn, has had 3 major hacking events. Has lost money 3 times. The most recent was $50 million, and that was about a week and a half ago. Sovryn has had none. And the reason is that when we adapted the code, we improved the code. We introduced far more unit tests, much closer to 100% test coverage. We introduced monitoring systems. We introduced tooling to make sure that we could detect issues sooner. We introduced a process of QA and user testing on testnet. we introduced a bug bounty. The Sovryn approach has been adapted and improved. I think there's extremely talented developers working on Sovryn who are extremely dedicated to transparency and to security. And I think that code that has already been run and tested, even if it's been hacked, which we knew when we chose to use BZX code, we knew that it had been exploited several times, and we thought that was a good thing because it helped us see where the potential weaknesses were and improve it. So the way you use code which has been developed by others is by taking it to pieces and building it back up again.
But yeah, thank you for that explanation. But I mean, if you're not the as you stated, like it's been battle tested, and that is going to give us some confidence in the system. But to me, it sounds like if you're not the one battle testing it yourself, like you're missing out on a lot of like in vitro information that is happening in real time, and you're building that experience as it's happening, as you're resolving those bugs, or like intrinsic systematic, errors, and like this thing took years to develop, and like we understand
that's happened to us as well. So, for example, in the first iteration of the trading system, we were using a system that had been developed by Bancor, and they called it Bancor V2. And in fact, it still exists in our system in the form of a mostly deprecated but still existing AMM pool used for trading USDT. And over time, we came to recognize why Bancor chose not to really promote it or progress with it, and that was there was very severe issues with it. And so we deprecated that. And so that does happen. So does it happen? It happens. We got it in the benefit of hindsight, but in practice, so did Bancor. So I think neither of our teams, when we started using the code, realized the vulnerabilities or sort of like exploits that were available until we had started really working with that code. So you need to stress test things, and so we do.
Yeah, thank you. And so some protocols may opt to choose like a non-open source, approach. Like for example, Uniswap v3. As far as I know, that is closed source. So what would be like a response from Sovryn if you were like using the open source v1 of something, and then the next v2 turns out to be closed source? Like, what would you be doing or thinking in that case? Would you deprecate it, or would you choose something different? Would you develop something of your own, or what do you think?
It's really on a case-by-case basis. So, for example, we're using some elements of Uniswap v2. Specifically, we're using the Oracle system. We're happy with it. We changed a lot of it, so it works differently on Sovryn, but that was the starting point. The limit orders, for example, that we're introducing are partially being introduced on basis of work that was done in SushiSwap. The genetic material of the code is out there, and we'll collect on an ongoing basis whatever we believe is the best tooling out there. And if it's closed source, well, maybe we choose not to use it. Code is a commodity. Code is not the most important thing in this space, not even by a long shot. Anything that you can code up in one way, you can code up in a different way. And everything that is being coded up, almost everything that's being coded up, is open source. Certainly anything that's being developed by any decentralized project. So having the best tech isn't a barrier to entry, isn't a competitive advantage. It's what you do with the tech that matters.
Thanks. That's really great to hear some of your thoughts there. may I ask another question? I notice I'm maybe taking up a lot of time.
After this one, I have to close out the call because we have
Okay.
a leadership meeting. Yeah.
Yeah, so I was in another community call, and I remember Iago was talking about like the prospect of going multi-chain or like venturing into some other chain ecosystem. What's the latest among those talks, so to speak?
There's no latest. It's just something that I think you're referring to a post that I posted. Something I've been thinking about and wanted to get some other people's thoughts on. I think that there's probably better things that we can do than sort of copying the code and redeploying it on other chains. So, for example, a much more interesting option to my mind, and it's something that we're investigating, is creating sort of embassy contracts, which would allow people from other chains to interact directly with Sovryn protocol on Sovryn in a seamless way using relay mechanism. So that's something that we're architecting a potential design for, and we'll see how that plays out.
Yeah, that sounds interesting. And thank you for elaborating on our questions. That's very helpful. Thanks for your time, everybody. And yeah, keep it going. Thanks.
Thank you, sir. What is your name again?
I'm Dennis.
Dennis. Nice to meet you, Dennis. Hope to see you again on future calls. So I want to thank everyone for joining in, being a part of our mission to carve out a trail for Bitcoin secured financial sovereignty, dismantling what people know and understand about money. So help us spread the word and create more sovereign individuals. So episode 29 of the Sovryn Community Call